Right, hello and welcome. My first tip would be don't take apart too much at once. If you're working outside like me especially, you want to just be doing one area, protecting it and moving on to the next area. Another good tip is to make sure you cover things like seams and gaps in there. I just use duct tape and it just prevents any water getting down into the places where you're working. Places like here, when a car's sat, water, dirt builds up and it starts to rust. So if you make sure these areas are clean and even polish them, you're going to make it last longer while you're working on it. If you're anything like me, you're not going to have a lot of time. So you don't want the car rusting while you're working on it. It's been absolutely weather lately. I've been really restricting into what I can do and can't do. I try and wrap up things like this just to, prevent any corrosion. There's absolutely loads of wax oil in here. I mean, even if you've got a garage, these tips are good. Like bolts, for instance. I put screws and bolts back in where I can and use little pots. These I know are all for the wing. So I just put these in a little tub, an old cleaned out food tub, and put it in there. So I've got all the bolts in one place. All that water would have gone inside. I use that just to protect it. And it's stopping any water getting onto the loom there or anything else. I really find in general it's just a lot harder to stay organised if you just run in there and take everything apart. It's just easy to forget where things go and what bolts go where. If you just do it bit by bit and look after everything, you're going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to putting things back together. Because you always come across problems that you didn't expect. This car had an overheating issue, and while I was taking the front end apart, I was actually coming down here looking for rust, and I went in behind this. I took out the water bottle and everything and found out the Webasto actually has a pipe missing, which I'll show you footage of, and that could be part of the reason why it's overheating. I never would have found that had I not gone that deep. It's not like anything like that would turn up on an OBD reader or anything. So on days like today, the weather has got a small window where it's not going to be it down. So I'm going to have a go at something. It's going to rain later, so I can't go and do anything big. When the weather was better, I took this off, and now I can just give this a quick skim over with the wire brush, maybe put some rust converter on there and paint it. And the good thing is about this is it will fit in the car. So I can store it in there. If it rains again, doesn't matter. This is still going to be dry and it's going to go off. And that's one thing done. Tools wise, you'll acquire tools as you go along. So you get stuck on one thing and then you end up buying a tool for it. Like for instance this. I couldn't get the drive shaft nut off. I had to order this and wait for it to turn up. And then I just used that to get it off. And now I've got this set for if I need it in the future. You don't have to rush out and buy a whole tool station, spending thousands or anything like that. You just need to get the bits that you need as you go. Doesn't have to be expensive either. This 1/2-inch ratchet here, this was about £8.99 or £7.99 from Aldi. I just kept all the socket thingy that came in. That's done me proud, that has. It's taken apart the whole front end. I used it to help take out all the suspension and everything, so yeah, not a problem. You really don't need to spend a lot of money on tools. I don't care what they say. Just look after them, make sure you don't leave them out in the rain to get rusty. Don't lend them to people either. If you lend to people your tools, you don't get them back. Just my experience, something's always missing or broken or not right. Just don't lend them out. Now, if you want to restore an old car, 99% of the time you're going to be using this stuff. Wire brushes, sandpaper, we've got zinc-based primer, paint and lacquer. I wouldn't do any painting or exposing bare metal when the weather's wet or it's potentially going to be wet. Always look ahead at the weather and make sure that you're going to have a good couple of days before you do any of this stuff. There's always things that you can do when the weather's bad, like for instance looking up parts. These bolts are absolutely done that were on the suspension. I could order those, find out what they are, measure them, get stainless steel ones maybe. That's something that you can wait for. So what I'm going to do right now is have a quick go at this. You can use the car for storage, but just don't go too crazy because you won't be able to get to anything and you're going to have an absolute nightmare finding your stuff, and it's also going to ruin the interior. So Just try and keep it simple. Use it for a little space for letting things dry out. Things that you've primed and painted, things that you're treating with rust converter. It's just a good little tip. Use it like a mini garage. So I'll remove this. A lot of it really is just about pushing yourself and getting it done. You know, like going to the gym. I don't know if you go to the gym, but it's not actually at the gym that's the hard part. It's the going in the first place thing. And that's what restoring a car is like. You get tired, you feel overwhelmed, but once you start, you find it's actually quite therapeutic when you're just looking at one little piece at a time and not focusing on the whole big picture. That comes together at the end. You just start with the little things and work your way up. Don't have a bench, no problem. Just use the environment around you and you'll get the job done. Right, so I'm just working in some of the more awkward places with this handheld wire brush. Why not use sandpaper? Why not go to town on it? But this is just a simple family car. It's not like a Porsche or anything, you know. I would love to have a really cool classic sports car or something to restore, and then I probably would use sandpaper and go right down to metal and spend a long time caressing it. Right, the clouds are starting to get threatening now, but we're on schedule, so it's not a problem. This is looking much better. Most of the rust is gone. You know, the way it works is when you take one piece to restore, you should be treating it like this is the only piece. You make it as good as you can, and then you take the next piece off and you do the same thing again until eventually you have a fully finished car. So next I'll be applying rust converter to all of this. Well, I know I've got rid of most of the rust, but there's tiny little bits that you can't even see with the naked eye, and also bits like that in the welds, and the rust converter is just going to go in and convert those and help protect it for longer. So I went in for a bit of lunch in the shower, and of course it rained, and it's there, look, in the warm and dry, nice and safe. Right, well I was just about to put the rust converter on. I've learnt a valuable lesson, which is don't do these lids up too tight, especially if there's a bit of rust converter around the rim, because it's absolutely glued shut now. Just got it. See, this kind of car restoration is a lot simpler. It's when you get into your welding and stuff is when things really get more difficult, isn't it? It's the same principle, even if you're welding. You just do a little bit each time, each day, and work it out carefully. So you're not wasting space, you haven't got stuff everywhere. Keep things like fairly simple. I think that's the key, keep it simple. So I bet the first thing a lot of people want to do, they get their ideal project car, and the first thing they do is strip it to absolute pieces to a shell in the garage. Because let's face it, garage or not, how many people have project cars that take forever to complete, you know? Or they just never get completed and they end up selling it begrudgingly years later. You know, people like to buy parts off eBay and procrastinate, but really if you want to restore a car, the only way to do it is just to get in there and do something. So this rust converter should help protect what I've done. The seams and welds, they're the most vulnerable bits. There we go, all safe and warm for a minute. Right, I'm just doing another coat now. Like, how many people do you know that have just got cars sitting there rusting away? I'll do it one day, I'll get round to it someday. Oh, I'll have time one day. You won't. I'm telling you now, you won't have time. You just have to find it. Just an hour here and there. That's all you have to do. You have to make it happen. Just do a bit each time. That's set really nicely, those two coats. So I think what I'm going to do is take this inside later once the kids are all asleep and turn it over and do any other little bits. Well, the weather's looking lovely. There's been last minute changes to the forecast and it looks like it's going to be a nice weekend. So I'm going to be able to tackle some other bits. See what I plan on doing over the weekend if it's dry and if I've got time. Is have a go at these. Just tidy up any little bits. Under here maybe, the edges. Little extra paint here and there. Nothing major. On the chassis legs, and I want to clean up the bolts. So I'm thinking that I want to make some kind of bolt bath out of things I can find to clean up these bolts, make them look new again, ready to put back on with my nice shiny new cross member. Under there particularly, little spots of rust starting to show. Nothing major, but why not? I've done all this and made this look nice. I might as well continue it up the chassis leg. The wings will be next too. I'm looking forward to doing the wings because this is actually crumbling away and it's going to be interesting finding a low budget solution to a wing that's crumbling away. This side is the same except we've got a dent too, lots of rust breaking up on the inside there as you can see. So yeah, it's going to be fun, this is. These are going to cost you quite a lot of money, all your primers and paints, you get through a lot, sandpaper, wire brushes, etc. So it's best to be sparing and use them where you really need them. Like I'm going to use this on the seams and the parts where it connects with the car is where it's going to be painted. It doesn't really need it down there. This is all, none of this is going to be seen. It's got the rust converter creating a barrier for it. Yeah, at £13 a can, I think it was 13 or 14 quid for this. I don't really want to be using a whole can of it on something that you're not going to see. I've got to say, I'm not having the best time with this primer. It's spluttery when it sprays and it's not very powerful, the can. I've shaken it loads and it's made no difference, so yeah. I'd avoid this one if I was you. There we go. The primer's just going nice and hard on these. There we are. Now, with this good weather coming in, I'm going to do this area like I said. There's also something else that needs looking at, which is these. The great thing about these, being off the car, is I can get these taken apart, take the springs off, and these are something I can clean up on rainy days. It's only small, don't need a lot of space. So yeah, I'm going to get these sorted out. I'm going to buy the dust cover kits and I'm going to return it to standard suspension instead of these lowering springs. The purpose of this video is just to show you that you can do it without a garage, bit by bit, you know? You don't always have to be out here. There is going to be a couple of nice days and that will happen to you. There'll be a few days of clear sunshine where you'll be able to really get stuck in. And you want to have everything ready to go so you're not waiting. Have all your bits ready, packed away, you know what you're doing, where you're doing it. Organisation is the key. So you know exactly what you're doing as soon as the weather's good and as soon as you've got time. What I'm going to do with this, when this paint has gone hard, I'll turn it over and spray the other side. I'm going to use enamel paint to paint these, along with the chassis legs, because I want them to be super strong, well protected. Just that one thing there. Imagine it on here with that painted and those bolts cleaned up. And imagine this all cleaned up with a new dust cover, a new spring, probably a new top mount if I can't clean that up. All in here, sat nice. And I'll paint and clean up the calipers, discs. Everything's going to look lovely. And all you have to do is chip away one thing at a time. This wing as well. There's a saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. And it's true. Just take your time. Do what you can, when you can, bit by bit, and you'll end up with a lovely finished product. So there we have it. There's our cross member put to bed for the night. It's all about patience. You have to take your time. The Toyota video where I put the battery plate in too quickly because of the rain is a perfect example of what happens when you don't wait long enough for paint to go hard. So yeah, thanks for watching guys, and I hope you got some helpful tips. Main thing is just get stuck in. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to have to do things again, and don't be in a rush, and it will all come out good in the end.